Hello, hello.
Hi everyone, we are back again.
Again. It's like weekly now. It's
Yeah,
good.
yeah, getting some consistency.
As an autistic person, I support consistency 100%. So I am on board. I love it. I'm here for it. Um, okay, so last week I'm kind of late to the party. So I apologies on that in advance. But I think that the conversation is very continuity based, where we see themes throughout society on it constantly. So we want to talk a little bit about the BAFTA awards and what happened on stage with the presenters and a man who is disabled in the audience and the power dynamics within there. So I don't know if you want me to just roll with this, Jared, but if
Yeah,
you want
go
to say
for it.
anything on it first, I feel like it's just kind of it's it's kind of my responsibility as the white person in this conversation to amplify the actual intersectional factors here, because I want to pull some of that load off of anybody who's marginalized who has been trying to speak out and has been, I don't know if silenced is the right word, but criticized or met with any sort of confrontation about it. There are two main factors here that we're talking about. So we're talking about racial factors and we're talking about disability factors. So just as a summary of what happened at the BAFTAs, and I do not know who the actors are. I do not know their names. I do not know the man who has Tourette's, his name. I know nothing about him. I'm literally coming into this as an objective observer. So with the two black actors they were presenting an award, I believe, not receiving an award. Am I correct on
At
that?
that time, yes,
Okay,
this is Delroy Lindo and Michael B. Jordan.
perfect. So they were on stage at the time, and a man who was featured in a documentary about his life and Tourette's syndrome was in the audience. And basically, during the time that they were on stage and they were featured in the video that was captured for the awards, the N word was blurted out by this man, where it could very clearly be understood. I listened to the audio over and over again, and it's clear as day what he said. Allegedly, that is not the only slur that was said, because when Alan Cumming, who, by the way, I actually really do like, because he's vegan, he's a member of PETA, all this sort of stuff. I saw his apology. I don't know if that's it, but Alan Cumming was the host of the show. Very prominent member of the LGBTQIA plus community as well. And when he was on stage, the F slur was said by this man as well. There was also, was it Free Palestine that was said? It was something related to Palestine.
Yes.
And then I think that might have been it. I think it was just a three pronged approach here.
There was also he said something about the PDF file at some point to someone. I'm
Okay.
not quite sure all about that, but
Yeah.
basically he was ticking. He has Tourette's.
Mm-hmm.
Tourette ticks are, a part of Tourette's, and one of his ticks was, saying some bad, socially bad thing when somebody that came from some type of social class or what have you, or race or whatever, came up, then that take occurred because the environmental contingencies were there, and he doesn't, because of his disability, have the ability to prevent that from occurring at that time.
Right. So there's a lot here. So the BBC basically said, we're going to. This was not live, by the way. It was pre recorded. The BBC went through and edited and basically bleeped out the Free Palestine bit, bleeped out the F slur with Alan Cumming, but did not bleep out the N slur with the other two actors, which was a choice that the BBC made, which basically says that, okay, well, disability and, you know, whatever stance you have on this war is okay to be blurred out because we don't want to offend any of those people. However, we're okay offending Black people and leaving the N word in there because whatever. So that was a decision made. So the dynamics here are you have Black men in power, and then you have a disabled man who's white in power. And so I look at intersectionality as kind of like a pyramid. And I don't know if that's the right way to look at it or what, but basically at the very, very top of the pyramid, the little bitty point is the white man, Christian, heterosexual, cisgender white man is at the very peak. Now, as you kind of go down that pyramid, I kind of see intersectionality as, okay, there's one factor here. You're a white man who's disabled, but you're cisgender, you're heteronormative, whatever. You're one tier down. And so like I kind of look at it that way. And so as you kind of add intersectionality factors, okay, being a woman, okay, being a Black woman, okay, being a disabled Black woman, you move down the pyramid until you're basically down at the bottom. And the way I depict that is at the very bottom, you have the least amount of access, the least amount of support, the least amount of power in any dynamic whatsoever. So arguably, both of these intersectional identities in my tier system would have been right at the same level. Not that that matters, because I think any harm is harm. But if we're going to kind of pull straws and figure out, okay, well, who's the more privileged out of these? I don't really know that you can do that. So this man who has Tourette's, and I've read a lot of different things on Tourette's. I do not have Tourette's. I am disabled in other ways, but I do not have Tourette's. As a member of the disability community, we are genuinely very insistent on accountability. So regardless of what our disability might say is okay for us to engage in, I have made several mistakes as an autistic person who especially was unaware they were autistic socially. Like I've said things that have hurt people. I wasn't aware of those things right away, but I did learn of the impact later. And so that was still kind of, the ball was in my court. I was still accountable for the harm that I caused. And so what we're seeing here is that, first off, the BBC messed up. They owe a huge apology, not just a, I'm sorry if you felt attacked or whatever. And I don't know that I've seen a BBC apology formally, so full disclosure on that. I do know that the man who has Tourette's issued an apology about, John issued an apology that basically said, I'm sorry that I made you feel bad. That ain't it. So we have a lack of accountability occurring on behalf of the privileged white disabled man. And I think that's where a lot of people in comments on social media are kind of like not getting this, where I'm seeing a lot of phrases like, well, he doesn't know any better. He can't control it. He literally is doing this involuntarily. Okay, you know what? All of us who are disabled have those things, but if we realize that that impact harms another person, it's not going to help our community to enable that behavior. It's just going to set us back in the fight of social justice. And so when we enable that sort of behavior, what we're doing is saying the feelings, first off, the feelings of the Black community do not matter. And that is wrong. That is so wrong. I can't even begin to start to talk about that. And I'm not going to talk about it because I shouldn't have to. No one should have to. But then you're allowing this man to use an excuse of disability. Disability is never an excuse for behavior. I do not care. I've had students engage in behaviors toward me, kicking me, hitting me, spitting on me, all these things. You know, in the field that we work in, I can kind of let some of that go because of what our role is. We assume that role. But if someone were to do that out in society, you know, generally there would be repercussions. There would be, you know, like some sort of a plan put in place. Well, how can we prevent this in the future? How can we work with you on this behavior? How can we also work on mitigating and rectifying that harm that you've put on another person? You know, just because you're disabled doesn't mean that those repercussions shouldn't apply. I think even as simply as when we're teaching individuals to toilet train, We're not going to let someone just kind of have accidents everywhere and not kind of go over, well, there's kind of a consequence in this. We're not just going to let pee sit in the rug forever. We're going to actually kind of show you how to dab the rug and kind of clean the environment because you had an accident. I am an adult. I live with my spouse, but if I were to break something, I need to clean it up because I don't want him to walk in glass or whatever. And that's the thing. Like, if we're not holding an adult man aware of his actions accountable, what are we doing for those who are higher support needs? And that is scary to me. So, like, none of this whole you literally can't help it thing. You may not be able to control your tics. I'm not saying that you can't. I'm not saying that you can. But what I am saying is also acknowledge that impact. Clean up the impact as much as you can and educate others. This is such a good opportunity for him to also amplify his stances and his movie, but instead of taking it in the way that you could do it and amplifying and raising up the disability community, you're running the opposite direction. And that's not doing us any good. I'm sorry, rant over for right now.
No, you're good. I think that one of the things that you hit on that I really want to echo is the whole. I feel like a lot of people are infantilizing John, and when I
Yeah.
say a lot of people, I'm saying a lot of white people are infantilizing John. He does
Yes.
have a disability. That does not mean that he doesn't have responsibility. That does not mean that he cannot take responsibility by saying, "Hey, sorry, that was my disability. I apologize." Or even to put himself in, other situations. I think there's a lot of things that we could say could have been done because we could talk about this and that. And I think that one of the best things that I heard online was Crutches and Spice talk about accommodations. And when it comes to situations like this, they have or they should have a disability coordinator at that is working with John to figure out, hey, John, let's figure out what's best for you. Let's talk about your disability, talk about how it presents. You're the expert on your disability. So let's discuss ways to support you. And people are like, oh, well, what is he supposed to do? Leave the room? It's like, I have a PhD in special education. That does not mean that I get to pick and tell him or you what the best thing for him to do is. It's a conversation that needs to happen between him and the disability coordinator, individuals that are best suited to be able to set up the environment so that he remains and retains his dignity and everybody else in the environment is able to feel respected as well. One of the things that has been said is, oh, well, they said that, you might hear some harsh language because someone in the audience has a disability. I think a lot of people, why people think that the N word is just a little hurtful word, but they don't really understand and associate the history that comes with that word, especially if you're a Black American outside of America, and then you still hear that word. That's one part. Another part is that I feel like a lot of white people have difficulties when it comes to not centering the white person and simply just centering a Black person and their feelings and what's going on with them. So many times when it's white people that are talking to me about this situation, they fail to be able to center a Black person's feelings. And I just don't understand that. I
Right.
don't understand how it's so difficult to understand that someone is being dehumanized. Someone is on stage just simply doing their job and they have feelings and thoughts and need to be protected and supported. But there is no thought of that because all of the thought goes to the white man who they decide is to be infantilized. So it's like they can't even hold both together. They only can
Right.
hold the white man and what's going on with him and his feelings. And it's like, oh well, he left right after, and he felt like it's like, okay, he's done multiple. This problem has occurred multiple times in this event, which tells us that especially if you've worked with people with disabilities, that the behavior intervention plan ain't working, that the IEP ain't working, that whatever you've got going on, if you continue to have problems and the behavior persists, the environment is in some way reinforcing the behavior. the only way that he was able to make a change was for him to remove himself from the environment. That is a failure on the behavior intervention plan, which means that we need to discuss and critique it so that next time it could be more successful. So next time he can go to these award shows and not have this problem. I was I'm gonna say something. Y'all gonna have to just forgive it and get over it. I was watching a podcast, and one of my podcasts that I like, and it's two black people talking about it, right? And one of the black people was like, "Look, if you got the nigga Tourette's, then you can't come to the BAFTA. You can't come to the award show if you got the nigga Tourette's."
Amazing.
It just makes you say that. And they were talking about, like, we don't need to be educated more on this topic. We understand
Right.
what's going on. But when you have this going on, you have to do something. There has to be a plan in action. I have students the same as you have that have, hit, bit, spat, kicked, thrown things, eloped, all these things. We don't just allow it to persist. We actually have to take action. We actually have to do things. And when I hear so many people that are not in a disability community, that don't work with disabled people, that have no knowledge of any of this, and I'm telling them, I have a PhD in special education. I have worked with these populations. I have done the reading and the research and presented some of the research to you in the video. And they like, well, I'm white and I feel like I know more than you. It's just like, this is just another
That ain't
day of
it.
being black on the internet when you're overqualified, got to be twice as good, and work twice as hard for
Right.
half as much.
Which
And
is so wrong.
it's just, yeah, it's so frustrating. So like people are like, oh, well, his mental health must be it's like his mental health. So you're once again
Right.
only caring about him,
Right.
right? Like like in the like people are like, oh, should he apologize for every time? It's like in the movie that he actually put out in the documentary, he apologizes to people when it happens. So why is it different now?
Right.
Like
Great point.
and yeah, and then there's behavioral treatments to work on this specific type of Tourette's, that I feel like now would have been a good time to like discuss this. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's like, okay, well, this is a problem. Are there any treatments that could be provided? And people are like, oh, well, he's had this. He's apparently he's been the poster boy for Tourette's in the UK since like 1988
Yeah, that's what I
or something
saw.
like that.
Yeah.
And it's like, why have this would be a great time to promote that, to talk about it, to be like, hey, this is something that I want to do. But I also, and this is the part where we really investigate the contingencies going on. If he has been getting attention for this kind of thing for that long, it can reduce the probability that he's going to seek change in
Right.
his behavior. You know what I mean? It can still be harmful to him. It can still make it hard for him to go here. He can still feel painful and problematic about it. But it it could be that it's he has a contact to attention and resources to help continue this. And it's just like, okay, well, I just think this will be a great opportunity to learn and to improve and to
Right.
educate people. And none of those things
And we
happened. And yeah, and
didn't.
we just completely veered left. So, in rant on my part.
Yeah. And all of what you said, 100%, I'm right there with you. That's why important call out to all white people out there. Black people have said enough. They shouldn't have to say anymore. I feel like this is a call to all white people. Start speaking out, start talking about these things, because the whole responsibility shouldn't sit on the shoulders of the oppressed. That shouldn't be it. Like, yeah, educate yourself if you need to. There are tons of books on this. There are tons of videos and resources that talk about these systemic systems of oppression and understanding intersectionality and how that works. Whatever visual that, I talked about my pyramid, whatever sort of visual may help you with that and that understanding, learn about it. Learn about how you can speak out and advocate, because it shouldn't be on the people who are having to not only deal with the repercussions of those behaviors, but now have to do more labor and double the labor because, people aren't taking them seriously. And so it's just gross. There was two harms here. There was harm to the disability community. Then there was harm to the Black community. Nobody won in this situation. In fact, everybody lost. Nobody gained, and that's what I think bothers me the most. Is because you just chose full on violence, and so it's so interesting. You know, you talked about like the years of reinforcement that would have had to take place with John. And, you know, we see that in behavior intervention all the time. I want to be clear. It's not just his fault necessarily. Like he is accountable, but the systems at play that continue to reinforce all of that and continue to show him that, well, it's okay. You know, you didn't know any better. That's environmental too, folks. Like that is a bigger issue. This is a small example of a large virus, if you will, of all of the systems that are in place that continue to silence the voices of those who shouldn't be silenced. So, yeah, twofold harm.
Exactly, and it shouldn't be, black versus disabled. That's not it.
No,
Also, black disabled people exist. You know what I mean? I'm sure a lot of
totally.
people have seen a lot of people, black people with Tourette's, talk about this.
Yeah,
But I think that one of the things that we like are not really talking about as well is why is the N word hard R one of the words selected by the Tourette's? Like, right? There are a
yeah,
selection of
great.
words
Yeah, I
that
love
are
this.
chosen as ticks, right? So the only words that are chosen as ticks are harmful words in society that are dehumanizing, mean, inappropriate. So if we look at all those words, there are societal reasons, right? So the only way that the N word would be appearing as a word for the tick would be if you live in a deeply racist society, specifically anti black racist society, for that word to peak to the top, right? He didn't say, he didn't say bitch. He said bitch, but he didn't like the word you choose. It's not like loser. You know what I mean? If
Right.
loser had a higher inappropriate value, then that would have been the word selected. So we have to understand that behaviorally, for this word to be selected, it has to be truly vile and the in the environment that he was raised and grew up in. So only in a truly viral, virulent racist society that was anti-black racist would he have that. And what was he like, Scottish or something? He's
I
from the
think
UK. I don't
so.
know. So I mean, I'm like, man, do y'all even have that many black people to,
I was gonna say,
So it's like,
now that's me stereotyping, and I probably shouldn't do that, but
yeah,
I picture like, you
same.
know, the
But I
kilts and
mean,
the
exactly. So it's like anti-black racism is global. It's not
totally.
only white people in America, and it's not only white people. It's also Latinos, Hispanic, Asian, and black people that have anti-black racism because it's so global. So I really would challenge white people to look. You have to look at the disability lens, but you also have to look through the anti-black racism lens as well and see that there's harm on both sides. This man had a loss of dignity, as we call it in disability spaces. And Michael B. Jordan and Delroy Lindo also had losses in dignity and humanity while being up there, being called that. And it could have perhaps stayed in the room, but there was a choice by the BBC to allow that slip to get out. And that was a specific choice. And that happened during a pause, a natural pause in speech. So
Oh yeah,
they
you
could
can hear
have
it so
easily
well, and
taken that out.
yeah,
And it's like, oh, this is a distraction from this and distraction from that. Everything's a distraction. We can walk bubblegum and chew at the same time. I could say that's bad and the Epstein files need to be released. It's not that hard to be able to say both. People act like we can only hold one thing in our brain. Maybe
I was gonna
maybe
say
y'all
like
can do
maybe
something
they
about it.
can.
Yeah, but
They
I
haven't
suffer
seen
from no
this.
such affliction.
God,
So,
I wish life were that simple for me. That was the way they say
yeah.
ignorance is bliss. Like, man, if I could
Oh,
just like
so much so.
shut out everything but like one thing, God, I would get so much done.
Yeah, so whoever's already in the comments typing away, you're probably white, in higher probability that you're not in the U.S. You also don't understand the racism in the U.S. and the race-based politics that occur in the U.S. So you really don't know what you're talking about, especially if you don't deal with disability. So just, you have the option to keep scrolling, to keep going, to not say anything. So just sometimes, like, this is the one time I'm not asking for your comment.
Like, don't comment and subscribe.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my gosh,
Like,
that's so
and
funny.
learn, listen and learn. Sometimes it's just time for you to shut up and learn.
It's not hard to just listen to somebody. And like, one of the biggest things that I've taken away from becoming older, becoming an elder individual in society is that I've learned with friendships in particular, and then like this applies to everybody. Do you want me to just listen or do you want me to try to help solve a problem? And there are sometimes I'll have meetings with students, and if something can come up when you're going to go through an advanced degree program, it will. That's just how it goes. That's like probably something Einstein was going to get to at some point with a theory and just never made it to. But things come up, and so my students will start telling me about like troubles and all this sort of stuff, and at some point I'll stop them and I'll just be like, hey, I just want to know for clarification so that I know what my labor looks like. Do you want me to just listen and validate, or do you want me to actually like problem solve and work with you on schedule? And I want to say like 90% of the time they say, I just want to be heard. Like,
Yeah.
life is hard. And that's the thing, is like just practice listening.
Yeah, I learned that with my fiance too, so I totally understand.
Yeah.
That's something that's a skill that you have to practice, and I don't think it's taught well in our society, especially when it comes to, oh yeah, I heard what you said. Here's how it's like. No, not everybody's looking for a fix. You know what I mean? Sometimes just hear them out, especially like in a society where like on the internet, one thing that I hate is like when you say, oh, I like pancakes. It's like, oh, so you hate waffles? It's
Right.
like I feel
It's
like
just an
there's a lot of that.
automatic assumption of bad.
Yeah.
It's so interesting how emboldened people are on the internet. I find it so interesting. Like I recently, it's funny because like I have a TikTok of my own personal stuff, which is just usually like crafts. I'll occasionally rant about being autistic, stuff random that applies to me. Recently, I had a video actually blow up. It has like 50,000 views. It's the one where you probably seen it. I built the moon gate around my
Yeah, yeah,
fire
yeah, yeah. I
pit.
like that one.
Yeah, so it's got like ton. I literally just like posted it so I would remember what I did and built.
Hmm.
And like literally there are people sometimes in the comments like, "Well, I would have done it like this." Okay, great. You could do that if you want. I literally just put this as a record on my own account. Like I wasn't looking for your criticism. But even things that
Everybody's
don't
different.
matter like that shit. Like what?
I hate that. Like I did a Black History Month minute, emphasis on minute,
Minute.
and then someone's like, "Well, you forgot to mention blah 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 blah." I'm like, bruh, like I went over the minute. What, you expect me to do the whole life story in a TikTok, in
Oh
in
my
an
gosh.
Instagram reel? Like, people are just like, oh my god, it's the worst. And like, interestingly enough, I feel like before social media really got popular, I feel like it was like for me Xbox Live, and
Yeah.
that's where I learned that anonymity
Super
just
toxic.
it increases the probability of problematic behavior, of behavior that you would never engage in if you were face to face with somebody. Because if you're face to face with somebody, you're a whole lot less likely to say a whole bunch of hurtful, harmful things, even if they were just critiques. You would be less likely to say that you would just keep it to yourself. But for some reason, people get on the internet, they get empowered, and they just go. And especially the people that have like, I know that there are bots, but there are also people with fake accounts or finstas or whatever,
Yeah.
and they use that account to make their harmful, hateful rhetoric. And I'm just like, how well are you doing in life to where you don't have to be doing a job right now? Do you
Or
not
they're
have a
12.
video game? Or you're 12, yeah. And even when you're 12, like, wouldn't you rather be playing a video game? Like, this is the most enjoyable game to you. Like, oh, man, like, what's going on? Like, when I was 12, I was, not to be old guy, I was either
Well, I'm older.
outside, I was either
Don't even.
outside playing sport or I was inside playing the game. And it was like outside till the lights go off and then inside until I have to go to bed playing the game. And it was one of the two. And I mean, now we have social media, so I guess that's different. But like, I also remember that for like almost each of the social medias that came out when it came to MySpace, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, for each one of those, I only got it because of a girl. Like,
That's amazing.
like I remember I got Facebook, I got MySpace because of a girl, Facebook because of a girl, Instagram because of a girl, and
Oh
TikTok
my
because of my
gosh.
fiance. So literally the only reason why I ever did any of that. So now I'm like, yeah, maybe that shouldn't be everybody's motivation, but
That's
at
so
least at the
good.
time it was mine.
You know that nightmare that always happens, and I say nightmare because it's a nightmare for me, like when you start in a new like position or you have like a new social circle and they're like, let's play two truths and a lie. That should be one of your truths. That would be so amazing.
That's a good one. Yeah.
I hate that. I hate any icebreakers, by the way. And that's just like me being autistic. Like it goes off script and I hate it.
Hmm.
At one
Hmm.
point, I even had like a script for like, here are my two truths and here's my lie. But like, I can't lie. Like, I'm really bad at it, which I guess is a good thing because I don't know. But then people find me off putting because I'm not socially lying about things. Like, if you come in,
Yeah.
I don't know how I got on this. I'm sorry. But like you come in, you got an ugly shirt, and you ask me how you look, I'm going to say that shirt is ugly. I think you need a different one. Like I'm going to be honest because I thought
Yeah.
that's what you were looking for. Like you asked me. So, yeah, like I said, I've learned things that I shouldn't say, shouldn't do. I've apologized for them. I have made up for them. I
Yeah, no, I think that in this case, this is one of those cases that's not rare at all. Society's wrong. We
I
should
agree.
value like this, and then also like there's a way that I can change the way that I say words. I would say, "Oh, you look good." I think that that shirt is not
You're better at
it's
this
not
than
my
me.
style of shirt. Yeah, exactly.
You're so much better at this. I'm just like, that is ugly.
But like
Girl, go change.
we should be able to like communicate those things. You know what I mean? I
That's
feel
so
like
funny.
especially if we have a good relationship with somebody, and especially if someone asks. You know what I mean?
Right? You
I would
asked.
want to know if like someone thinks that my short shirt is ugly. You know what I mean? Or
Yeah.
whatever. So it's, don't ask questions you don't want the answer to. Is I think also a thing. We don't value truth enough, which, but then there's like, it can go too far with some people are like, oh, I'm going to tell you the truth, even if it hurts. It's like, well, I mean, maybe they didn't ask for that. Some people go way too far and they're telling the
Yeah.
truth when nobody asked. And it's like,
And also,
bruh,
to what extent
nobody
do you mean
asked.
harm? Yeah. Like, is it something that's
Exactly.
actually offensive versus something
Hmm.
that's just going to be hard truth that you have to hear? I see them as
Exactly.
very different. Like, calling somebody the N word obviously would
Hmm.
not be it,
Yeah.
but yeah, all that to
Yeah.
basically say, like, I've had to work on my soft skills over time. Like, when I started as an adjunct, I was full on telling students, and not like bad way, but I was like, you need to fix this. But I wouldn't like always include like niceties about it, like, hey,
Yeah.
I might consider doing this. Just adding those like socially relevant phrases and stuff like that. And I kind of roll my eyes at it because I'm like, I'm having to play neurotypical for a little bit. But that's part of the labor of being disabled is that you have to step up and you have to make those accommodations, like in the situation with the individual. Now, arguably, the harm is much more significant in the situation with the Tourette's syndrome shout out, but
Hmm.
it's the same thing. Like, there's still accountability.
Yeah. There's definitely still accountability. And the fact that people think that there can be none is
Yeah, just
is
because
like
of disability.
exactly. And then they don't like what is infantile
Infantilization.
Infantilizing?
What is
What does
that?
that mean? What
Right.
is that? No, I'm not doing that. And it's like, no, you are. You know what I mean? Especially like when a lot of times, and I think that this isn't always right, but a lot of times when we're working as behavior analysts or just working with someone with disabilities, a lot of times there's a goal for independence, right? And a lot of times that's great. Sometimes, just because you can be independent doesn't mean you have to be independent in everything, because you could have a more collectivist community or culture that you might be working with. So you have to really work with the individual. But a lot of times we're working for independence. Infantilizing people is really problematic because it prevents.
Awesome.
His like way he did it, and I was
That's
like,
so
that's
cool.
so cool. Um, but you have to
Jealous.
let them do it themselves. You have to give them that independence, and then be like, no, I'm not going to help you, so that they can learn to be independent. And a lot of times when environments and people don't know that we're working for that independence, they'll just do it for them, and then you have to
Yeah.
step in and say, no, no, we're not going to do that for them. They can do it themselves, so we're going to let them do it themselves. And I don't think that that's a lesson that a lot of people know about or understand how to teach and allow. That is a lesson that we need to start, really talking about.
It's so interesting because as you were talking about this, which is 100% accurate and spot on, there's an interesting dynamic when it comes to disability. And this is not usually the case in other forms of intersectionality. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't see it in other types. So you have infantilization on one end of the spectrum, and that is obviously not going to help anybody. My thing is independence with autonomy, and so being able to direct your own life and determine at what point do I need to use this skill, at what point do I want to use this skill, at what point do I want or need assistance, versus just being able to demonstrate a skill. So they're very separate. People tend to think they're synonymous, so I just wanted to kind of differentiate between that. And then on the other end of the spectrum, it's usually all or nothing. And the other end of the spectrum is double standards. And so I've been in a situation where there's like multiple children in a family, one has a diagnosis, the other are neurotypical. The individual who has the diagnosis is held to a higher standard sometimes than the neurotypical children. And when I have seen that and called it out, it's like, luckily I've worked with families who for the most part they hear me and they're like, I know you're coming from a good place, thanks for calling that out. I didn't realize what we were doing was actually setting a double standard, but that's really good. So like, you have kids who are learning how to clean their room or whatever. Well, my autistic child's room is always a mess. We're always on him to keep it clean. But yet, I peek around the corner into the one of the neurotypical siblings' room and it looks like a tornado just hit in there. But we're not nagging and harping at the kid who's neurotypical, who should probably just like have a chore chart or something like that. So I've seen that a lot, and it doesn't matter if it's language skills, life skills, independent living, whatever. I'm sure you have too, though.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of like training to perfection when it comes to kids
Yeah.
that are in our field. And I just like people are allowed to make mistakes. Like, and and it gets to a point where it's like I feel like a lot of kids that we work with could be like trained to be like so perfect, so robotic, that a lot of critics had to tell individuals pull back on that. That's not okay. And that's a thing that once again relates to dignity and autonomy. And like there's also the what is there's a term for this, and of course it's escaping my mind, but you have to allow people to put themselves in dangerous situations
Oh,
that they
yeah.
might get harmed, but if they
with
choose to
support.
independently, with support, but like, you know, autonomy, you know what I mean? Like, you know, when somebody is becoming autonomous and they, you know, maybe have the disability and they want to go out and live alone or live in a group home instead of their parents' house. And it could be very difficult for the parents to allow that to happen. And it's like, you got to let them live their life. You know what I mean? We've worked to a point to where they're able to live with you, great, but do they want to? What about what they want? Not only what they need, but also what they want. And I feel like that a lot of times doesn't get talked about enough because it's like, oh, what do they need to fit into the society, or what do they need to be better supported? Yes, but what do they want? How do they feel? Like, that's such a big one that I feel is lost in all of the other goals and ideas, that it's just like, you know, we need to figure out how to have that conversation and how to get towards that. Because I have days where it's like, I don't want to do anything but lay in bed and play Pokemon. If they
Hmm.
want to chill on YouTube or whatever, like, I've had those days. Like, why
We
are
all
they
do.
not allowed those days too? Yeah.
Yeah, that to that point, it's important to emphasize. I think a lot of people forget disability is dynamic, and it varies every single day. And but the thing is, like, I think a lot of people tend to excuse the dynamic nature of disability, like you discussed. You know, regardless of diagnosis or not or identity, we're going to have different baselines every single day, and it's going to look different. With disability, those baselines may appear more varied. And so there are some days that I, an able bodied, for the most part, autistic, but you know, with some physical disabilities, may have a flare up. And if that's the case, I have a stool that I can expand for my shower, that I can sit and I can do a
Hmm.
shower that way, because I'm still going to shower. That's important to me because I don't want to smell bad and I want to feel
Hmm.
clean. That's just like me as a person. But at the same time, I physically cannot stand because I'm risking passing out in a harmful environment, and I don't want to like hit my head and get a concussion and do
Exactly.
all this. And so, like, it would probably be startling for you to see me in a situation where I physically cannot speak any longer. It's happened. It's happened in situations that I need to be able to speak, but I go mute and I don't have words. And, you know, that's the thing, is like people don't always understand. But it's important for us as ABA practitioners, as special educators, as anybody who's working with disability in particular. And of course, considering intersectionality, because this could vary for everybody depending on what we're talking about. And we can kind of talk about that if we need to. But, you know, planning for that. What do accommodations look like? Well, there may be some days you don't need a walking cane, but I've got a cane ready in case I need it. And so
Hmm.
I can identify those days where today's a cane day. You know, I needed my stool for the shower. I'm going to need my cane and just to kind of help me along. And I'm not going to do any sort of yard work or anything like that today because I know that's just not it. I may have to shift plans. I may have to, you know what? You do that if you get sick. It is what it
Yes.
is.
Yes.
But you plan for those things with your learners so that they can identify those themselves, and then they can be more autonomous.
Exactly. I love that phrase. Disability is dynamic. People don't recognize, especially people that just, if you don't have any like communication, connection, common instances with people with disabilities, then you don't understand that. And so we need to say it more, that, you know, disability is dynamic. It doesn't always look like XYZ. And it doesn't always look like XYZ on the same person. It can look different at a different day, at a different time, and in different conditions. And that's the way it works. And that just makes me like really feel how much more it's necessary to get education to the non-disabled people, or more accurately, not yet disabled people,
Yeah,
because, you know,
it could
everybody
happen at
is,
any point to anybody.
yeah, exactly, exactly, especially as you age.
God,
So
don't get me
yeah.
started. It's funny because, like, as you age, you start to collect diagnoses and you start to collect specialists. And
Hmm.
it's funny, I'm probably like the youngest person ever at any single one of my appointments at like my cardiologist. And like I'll sit in the waiting room and I'll have like elderly people, like actual, I joke that I'm elderly, but like actual elderly people like glaring at me, like, what are you doing here? It's like, you don't have to have a heart attack to have a cardiologist. You may have a chronic condition where your heart just ain't it, you know? But
And I think
yeah.
it also goes to, intersections of access sometimes. Also like we should be going. I can't tell you how many people just don't go to the doctor. Even if they
Yeah,
have access, they just don't go to the
right.
doctor or they
Which
don't go
is
to the dentist or the
concerning.
optometrist until there's a problem. Yeah. And then it's like, oh man, well, if we caught this early, well, the only way to catch it early is to go. And
Right.
then also be honest. Are you smoking? Are you drinking? Are you having unprotected sex? Like they're not they're not your parents. You
Right.
need to be honest with your doctors and with your lawyers, okay?
There's that willful noncompliance, but then there's also the access. And it's like, man, the doctor is so expensive. I actually, it's so funny we're talking about this. Like, I had an endocrinology appointment last week because I also have autoimmune thyroid. Because what else? Add it to the list. And I was talking with her, and she was asking me. I use the Mark Cuban Cost Plus pharmacy. I don't go through my
Mm-hmm.
insurance. And you sound like you kind of might be familiar with it, but
Yeah.
Mark Cuban's one of the billionaires, maybe millionaire. I think he's billionaire, but he's featured on Shark Tank. He's always one of the experts, and my spouse loves watching Shark Tank. So I learned about who Mark Cuban was because of that. Well, he's super liberal, and he's very anti capitalist systems, even though those have put him in a power position and privilege. But he started this pharmacy because of the rising cost of pharmaceuticals. And my doctor was asking me, she's like, what is this pharmacy that you use? I'm like, well, it's the mail in pharmacy. I'm kind of talking to her about it. And she's like, wow, that's really cool. So like, do you use insurance for it? I'm like, actually, it's cheaper for me to go through the Mark Cuban pharmacy than to bill through insurance, because insurance will then file with like CVS, or they'll file with, whatever provider is filling that script. And then they'll raise the price, and then they'll pay out higher, but then my copay becomes higher because they've raised the price. And she's just like, oh my God, don't even get me started. And so she was
Mm-hmm.
just like, you've convinced me, I'm switching. And so, you know, those systems in place are meant to keep people poor. They are meant to continue to not let people have access because, oh, the poor people don't deserve the care. I'm not saying this is me. I'm saying this is like
Yeah.
people in charge, the elite, if you will.
Exactly.
But yeah, so there's barriers to access, but then also, like, if you have access to that privilege, please use it. Get your screenings, get your tests. It sucks. I get my arm pricked like all the time because, I have all sorts of stuff going, but I would rather know than not know, and I would rather get science based treatment if I can. So please do it.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's sometimes the only way that you're going to be able to deal with an issue that you don't even know has yet arisen. Catching it early can be better. And also, it's like, do you really want to have the problematic symptoms that co occur with the issues that are going on with your body? Or would you rather catch it early before those problematic symptoms occur? It's like, imagine going to the dentist for a cleaning, and they see something and they take care of it before you have the toothache. But a lot of times for people, it takes the toothache to get them even into the dentist.
I get it. I have dental anxiety. I'm not as bad about the doctor now, but I nitrous oxide all the way. And if I have to have like a filling or anything like that, I have a doctor that does light sedation, so they give you like Ativans, and you basically are just out of it the whole time. That's how I have to do it, but I still do it. Find you a dentist who gets it.
There you go, because a lot of my dentists that I end up with, recently I've had better ones. I don't know if they've gotten better training or whatever, but in my past, like they'll either be like, "Oh, you're a big strong man. You don't need that
Oh
much
gosh,
Novocaine," or
that
they'll do
stigma.
the whole like I don't know if it's like they're like, "Oh, he's black, so he doesn't feel
Right.
pain like that." I don't know what it is, but yeah. So I definitely have a lot of dental anxiety, and I had a lot of cavities growing up because my parents would take me often, and then. I remember my younger brother, they call him the candy man because one time he went in with like 9 cavities.
Oh no.
and,
Oh, that's
and
awful.
yeah, and they would
9.
say he would say that Novocaine didn't work on him because they kept on trying to put it, and he just had to
Yeah.
like just take the pain. So
And
it's
that
like,
causes
well, at what
trauma.
point do we do the next thing? Yeah, exactly. So it's like, is he likely to go back to the dentist because you guys couldn't do the next thing or something else? So I
Right.
mean, it's whatever. It's not whatever. It's a problem that I wish was addressed. Another problem that I wish was addressed, not to switch to cavalierly, is that
Go for
we're
it.
at war apparently.
God.
The United States is at war, and
God.
there's a lot of people that are like, "Oh yeah, like what happened? Gas went up 10% overnight." And it's like, "Oh, well, you must be one of those I don't do politics where here's politics doing you in a way that affects you directly." Because we're at just want to mention that the way that I feel personally about this is that the United States has once again gotten into a forever war that there is no benefit for us, and we happen to be, the United States happens to be aligned with that blue and white country over there, and either they're our colony or we're their colony, and we're basically doing their bidding. That really has nothing to do with us. I hate when people be like, "Oh yeah, well they're over there fighting for our freedom." It's like, well, how did our freedom get over there? Like, that's my question. So that's just how I feel, and I really wish that weren't the situation. But the electorate, the democracy we have, chose Orange Man, and Orange Man bad, and Orange Man doing bad. It's that simple.
I'm an elder millennial and I'm tired of this. Like, I'm just so tired of it. I'm also generally a pacifist. I don't ever see any point to kill individuals. Now, I will say, like, stopping the Nazi regime in the 1930s, sure, that justified. But like everything since Vietnam sticks out. And I know like the boomer generation was protesting Vietnam. Where are you now? Like, we need you protesting all of these other things too. I don't see any war since then as necessary or vital. But war generally comes down to two things from the way I see it is money or religion. And I think that both of these are at play right now. And it kind of disgusts me because it's like I've seen people saying, oh, well, Trump's trying to start the end times as featured in the book of Revelation. And it's like, you believe that? You believe that. Now, I'm not religious. I I don't understand that at all. But it's like, why would you want that? Even if you were religious, why? I don't know. I try to always put myself in another person's shoes, and that is another thing that I just can't wrap my head around. I, ugh.
I agree. I don't understand how anybody can see Trump being any sort of
Right?
holy figure in
Right?
any kind of way. Like
The Antichrist,
and
maybe.
and exactly,
But
and Benjamin over there, I feel the same about him. Probably even he's definitely, in my opinion, much worse, especially the way that his track record is. But I mean, we don't need to compare. We could just say both these
Oh,
people are terrible and
yeah.
deserve the bad
I'm
place
fine with
should
that.
it exist. And I'm generally a pacifist too. And there are times like it's like I agree that there are times like when it came to slavery and it's like, oh, we
Yeah,
need to have an
absolutely.
uprising. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, kill your
Another
masters, in my
brilliant,
opinion.
brilliant example.
Yeah. So I mean, there are times when violence is necessary, in my opinion. But I don't see that this is it, especially when it comes to bombing like 180 girls at a school. Like, oh, is that how you're going to?
Children,
So I mean,
literal
I understand
children.
that it's a difficult situation, but
Is it?
I feel like,
But is it?
well, yeah. I feel like
Difficult
why are
situation.
we in there?
We,
Like
the difficult.
like we could have free healthcare. We could have
Oh my God. So
free
much
college.
money.
We could have so many things. We could have,
It's sick.
affordable housing, food, mental health services, all these things. But we need more bombs over there. Like the amount that's one of the things that frustrates me is like, why are we over like we over there, and it's like, the
Love it.
people that represent my demographic are not represented in any of the options, choices,
No.
votes, even that are over there, that are causing these things to happen. So like when I get online, it's like, well, you Americans voted for this, and I'm like, I think y'all need to understand how one, democracy works, and how two, my 13% population
Hmm.
voted,
Yeah.
because we really are still not, represented well or at all in many cases. And
Electoral
um,
college.
exactly. And then like I was looking up, like it reminds me of how Socrates felt about democracy. I don't know if you've heard about this. And he
Mm-mm.
was he was a very big critic of democracy, because he was like, okay, well, let's say if I was to build a boat and take it across the sea, who would you want to make choices on how the boat is built and ran? Just anybody gets to have a vote, or would you rather have it be people who
Who
are
know?
boats people who know,
It's
who are well
beautiful.
informed with choosing? And it's like that's basically what democracy is just giving anybody a vote on how the boat goes. And it's like, well, I heard this guy was, ordained by the boat gods to be able to lead the boat. So I'm going to choose for him, versus this actual like person who is a sailor who knows what they're doing.
Right.
And when everybody's vote is, counts for the same, but the education isn't there for individuals to be well informed, that's when you have a problem with your democracy, which is exactly what we have, which is why they're, in my opinion, attacking education to weaken the intelligence of the populace, to better control them, for individuals to be put in places of power that can more easily transfer wealth, once again, going back to money, and then, in my opinion, use religion as another way to transfer wealth and influence with their power.
It it's hard to kind of say some of this without acknowledging the privilege that you and I both have with advanced doctorate degrees. And I think it should be said, we are speaking from a position of privilege because we are educated, because we read, because we are aware of these things, and we know that. It's hard sometimes to let me actually step back. So it's hard for me sometimes to acknowledge that men have, and I what I mean by men is cisgender men biologically, who are voting in favor or opposition of me having rights as somebody who was born with a uterus. And so like it raises the question, should you fit the bill, so to speak? Should you pass a qualifying test? Whatever. Like, I know these are all systems of privilege designed to keep uneducated, poor people out. It's not always necessarily their fault that they're in that position. And so it brings up just so many questions of like, well, what would be better? Men not having a vote on women's rights whatsoever. I would love that. Oh my God, I would love it.
Same, same.
100%. And my
I'm
spouse,
I'm a cisgender man
yeah,
agreeing with you.
same. And like, I am married to the most, like, he's not religious, but like white man you could possibly be married to. And he would say the same thing. He's like, I don't want that on me. Like, I want you all to figure that out. You go through it. But yeah, and it's the same thing when it comes to these big issues. Like, if it comes to military spending, we saw that in the last election where people were blatantly voting against their own interests and saying, well, I love this policy, but you're not seeing that, like, harm to farmers is actually going to come because you're getting funding stripped, and you're not getting the benefit that you thought you were going to get. And so, like, but people who were aware of these things were like, hey, you realize if you vote for this, you're probably cutting your paycheck, or you're probably cutting benefits, or you're whatever. And we were told we were over exaggerating, and we were hysterical, and we were all of these things, and fear mongering and all of that. And it's like, how does that feel now? Like, I don't want people to be in that position, to be clear. I want them to know what they're voting for and sign up for and actually get those results if that's what they want. But that
Yeah, and
isn't what happened.
exactly. And like, to go to your point, it's so frustrating being part of the right too soon party, which I'm not going to say
God.
it's the Democratic Party because the Democrats are not that, but I'm saying as an individual who can detect, who can connect dots, who can see things happening
Pattern
and be
recognition.
like, and have pattern recognition. And it's like, oh my God, this is what's happening. And then people are saying, no, you're wrong. And then it happens. And then most of the time they don't even agree, yeah, you were right. They'll
No.
say something
No. Double down.
completely different, double down, say, oh no, this happened, we couldn't have predicted it, you know what I mean, you were it's a fluke, you were lucky, everything but, hey, you were right and maybe we should listen to you more. Like, it's so frustrating, and we have to live in this society with these people next to us whose vote is equally of equal value. Like, there are some people that I look at and it's like, and our vote is the same? Like, and maybe that sounds elitist or maybe that sounds this or that, but it's like, there are people that should not be, I wouldn't say should not be voting, but should have the opportunity and have the access to education to improve their understanding of the material outcomes of their vote. I think that's the way to say it. Because not everybody does, and I think that every day people are losing access to that, and it's extremely exhausting to provide a charitable, plat- palatable format and way to provide people with these things. Because it's like, I want to teach you, I want you to learn, and when I'm in the comment section, I swear, I know I'm petty, but I try to be nice and reply with education, and they
Hmm.
be testing me, and
Right.
then it's like, do I devolve into the petty, or do I continue to try to educate? And it's like, they're not going to read an article that you sent them, even if it's a free article. They're not going to watch a 5 minute YouTube video. They're not going to watch a 30-second TikTok. They might not even read your comment because they say too long, didn't read. And it's like, well, what do I do with that?
Yeah. I think it's important to also clarify that we are not in favor of voter suppression. And this is not what we're talking about, is not what I would consider voter suppression. When we talk about voter suppression, we're talking about making voting for individuals who would otherwise be qualified to vote inaccessible. So, like what we're doing with Social Security issues and like name changes and documentation and all of that, this ain't it. So,
Thank you.
I think it's important to kind of
Yeah.
mention that as well. Like, you and I are not in favor of voter suppression in that regard. Now, there are very few situations, well, historically, that would suppress possible voters. The only one I can really think of is felon status. You can't vote again, and that includes any charge, any felony charge, drugs, violence, whatever. Do I agree with that in all cases? Not necessarily. I think that if somebody's actually, making
There should be some way
amends,
to rectify
yeah, like if they're
some,
actually,
yeah.
but we have a really messed up penal system as well. Penal, we have a really messed up system that doesn't actually rehabilitate. It just
Yeah.
punishes, and that's a huge issue at the bottom of all of that. But yeah,
Punishes and enslaves.
yeah, exactly. So, and I mean, I'm trying to find, this is so kind of off topic, but kind of on topic. I'm trying to find a material or something that kind of teaches me about the history of bonding, as far as like
Mm.
bail bonds. And because to me, I see that system as so messed up, and once again another system of oppression, but I cannot find like a book on it. I cannot find. So like, if you ever are like thinking about it and you find something, send it to me. And this goes to anybody as well in the comments. Please send it to me, because that's something I'm super interested in. I watch a lot of crime shows and stuff, and I'm like, why is that bond set at 5,000 for this white man who beat his wife, but it's 50,000 for this black man who is trafficking marijuana? So like, that sort of stuff.
Have you read the new Jim Crow?
It's on my list. Does it go into the bond system?
I think it goes into a little bit, but I definitely know that
Nice.
um,
There could barely be more.
Alexander. They go into like really good like citations, and that's why I
Good,
think that you
okay.
can be dangerous and really good is
Love it.
by getting into their citations. And I think that what you were talking about, no to voter suppression, yes to voter education. No to
Yes.
voter suppression, yes to voter education. And I think that that's one of the most important ways that we can improve the quality of our voters and
Hmm.
then improve the quality of the electorate. And I think that the current administration and those that have power are really working hard to decrease the quality of the education that voters have access to.
But they
And
are?
it's often, yeah, and it's often behind, it's gate kept, you
Oh,
know.
yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yeah.
Well, I will definitely check out the new Jim Crow. There was like a weird thing with my library this past weekend. I was trying to find something new to read. I have to now. I've read so many like informative and like, I don't want to say depressing, but they are depressing because it's basically about society, dark, if you will, books that sometimes I like to shift and do like a fun. So I have like a lot of comedian autobiographies and stuff like that that I'm like, I need to shift over to that. Well, the library wasn't working great, and so it was basically like doom and gloom, or doom and gloom. And so I pulled a few of those, but I might swap out one of them for the new Jim Crow because it has been on my list for a while, and I've heard amazing things about it. So
It's incredible. It's a lot of doom and gloom, I guess, but it's like historical and it really helps you understand how we got where we are. And I think that it's really important. I think it's one that everybody should read. And a doom and gloom change that I made is I'm so glad you brought up books. Um, I was reading The Wretched of the Earth, which it's really lauded. It's really good. But I just needed something different for right now because I
yeah.
had been feeling like I've been doing doom and gloom. So it's Women's History Month right now. So
Oh,
I
I
switched
didn't even know
over to
that.
All About Love by Bell Hooks.
Okay.
And oh my God, like talking about love. This last chapter is chapter 2. She went into like how disrespected and mistreated children are, and how they're often treated less than human. And like she was giving this example of like there were a whole bunch of parents in like a meeting talking about some were talking about beating their kids, and then others were like she was like that's not okay, you wouldn't accept that if it was anybody else. And then one
Right.
parent was like, oh yeah, well, I don't hit them. I just grab them and then dig into their flesh really hard. And then she was like, if you said that about your husband or boyfriend, nobody would think that that was okay. But for some reason,
Well,
it's
some
okay with
people
children.
would.
So yeah, some people would. But like, she goes into like how like we don't learn about love or talk about love well. Oftentimes in popular culture, love is like a fantasy. And interestingly enough, most of the books about love are written by men that are highly lauded. Yet when you think about who talks about love, it's often you think about women talking about love. So it's just really interesting, and it's all about love, and I'm really loving it because it's something that I feel like, especially as somebody who's a cisgender male, grew up as a boy in our society who was told no crying in baseball,
Yeah.
and like love wasn't something that was really talked about. So it's like when I think about love and I love my fiance, or you love your parents or your family or your friends, how does that look? Is it in how does it look outside of what they do for you? You know what I mean? What does that love look like? And I think that it's a really awesome investigation that I don't feel like I've had enough opportunity to dive into, that I'm really enjoying right now. So
That's
positivity
cool.
corner right there.
And also, I think it's funny that I, a woman, did not know it was Women's Month. So awesome. all I, all I know is like February is Black History Month, and then I'm aware of Autism Awareness Month in April, which it's coming. The autistic community generally, like the adult autistic community generally, like dreads April every year because it's just like a fresh wave of garbage that comes through. And
You feel like it's like pink washing and like a lot of commercial. Is it like commercialized? If you don't mind me
I
asking,
don't
I'm trying to
mind.
understand.
Yeah, I'm just trying to kind of conceptualize and communicate it. So there is definitely a lot of commercialization. There's a lot of infantilization that happens. I I know that like it's personal preference on the autistic community, but for the most part, a lot of us reject some of the historical symbols of autism, like the puzzle piece, especially in like primary colors, because one, it's tacky looking, and all of us are like, that's too much. But two, it also makes autism seem like it's for children. And there's this common understanding that with services for autistic individuals, they end at early adulthood. And that is the case. There may not be funding for any sort of autism services once you get past like 21. 23, I think, is the latest I've heard. And I feel like maybe I've heard 25, but like 23 is like generally the peak I hear. So it kind of dismisses any of us who are adults and those who were missed early in diagnosis. So that's a problem. But, not just necessarily awareness, it needs to be about acceptance, and it needs to be about embracing autistic individuals as part of society, but just being aware autism exists. Like, we're always like, what does that even mean? Like, there's a meme I really love that's like, it's Autism Awareness Month. Be aware. I could be behind you at any moment. I might be behind you right now. I'm autistic. And so it's like, what does that even mean? Like, all of us just
Yeah.
argue about, because we're all so literal and we're like, be aware autism exists. Okay, great. Now what? So it's just so dismissive of all of our real life concerns, and especially the populations who are missed early on. Like, I could have benefited from services as a kid, 100%. I look back at my childhood and I'm like, oh my god, I was cringe. I was like, all of it could have had an easy explanation to it other than Robin's just weird, which I am. I embrace it now. But like, had someone told me years and years ago what I was, how I think, kind of empathizing with me a little bit, God, I would have had such an easier time. Middle school was hell for me. Hated it. Hated it because everything changed and I didn't know why I was still weird. So, yeah, all that to basically say, you start seeing like, there was a cop car out of Florida last year that was just covered in primary color puzzle pieces, and we were all calling it the Autism Mobile. Careful about getting in the Autism Mobile, you might catch it. Those of us in the community kind of laugh it off now, but it's still like, we've said this for years. How are you still not hearing us?
Yeah.
Some Autistic Awareness Month.
Interesting. Interesting. Because, like, the, so the way that I can conceptualize it is by kind of like placing it in my circles, how I understand Black history, and then trying to understand. And you're not a monolith,
Yeah,
autistic people, not a monolith. So you probably have
right.
your own. Other people have differences. I'll have my own when it comes to Black history month.
Absolutely.
Other people might have their differences. For me, what I've seen and what I see like in a lot of people's stories is Black History Month is often a celebration of Blackness. It's not only the education
It's not that
of what
here.
historical interventions, yeah, what historical things have happened, but
And
it's a
that's great.
celebration. It's all that. So, what in my question really is to you, when it came to Autism Awareness Month, what would you rather it be if you had your druthers, if you had the opportunity? And I understand, once again, it's not a monolith, so other
Oh
people
yeah,
might feel
no.
differently. What would you rather it be?
I would rather have some sort of a celebration as well. Like, not like last year during Autism Awareness Month, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. basically went on the record of calling us an epidemic and talking about how he was going to try to find a cure for us. And that's first off something that shouldn't be happening. I know that he and Trump both have grandchildren or whatever who are autistic. I'm just saying this from my own perspective. Like, my spouse and I kind of talk about this occasionally. Fast forward like 20 years and let's see if they talk to either one of them if they're still alive. But maybe not talking about us like we're a disease. Maybe not promising to eradicate what makes us different. There are, just like with any other human being, there are things that are strengths. There are things that are, areas that we don't do as well in. But just because we have a different label doesn't mean that those things are necessarily needing to be fixed. It's the double standard that we were kind of talking about earlier. Some of my strengths are pattern recognition. I can see things. I understand what's going to happen. Like, I guess every movie plot. My spouse is so over it. Like, he will try to show me a movie. He'll be like, oh, this is great. You'll never figure out. Like, within 5 minutes, I've guessed the plot. And he's just like, how do you do this? I would be really great probably in a crime lab, because I'd be like, oh, it's going to be this guy 100% every single time. So my pattern recognition is strong. My social skills, maybe not as great. So, I understand, but that's every human being. I don't understand why we get targeted about our deficits and nobody else really seems to have the brunt. But then you see like this Tourette's type situation, and he's absolved of it. I would never have been. Imagine if a black man had said that with Tourette's. Like, what would the dynamics have been then? And I'll say it so you don't have to. But like, if a black man would have said it, well, it's okay if they say that to each other. Like, come on. But like, he gets to walk off scot-free. But like, I'm always held accountable for my actions. So whatever. There's a whole thing there, but I'd definitely rather it be a celebration. I'd rather it be like, hey, this is what autism can look like. If you think you might be autistic or your child might be autistic, go get a screening or whatever. That'd be great. But last year was definitely like a huge step backward policy-wise.
That's interesting because like every year for Black History Month, I hear somebody like be like, "Oh, this is the worst Black History Month ever," because it seems that there are especially egregious instances of individuals with anti-Black
Yeah.
racist behavior during Black History Month, and maybe it's just highlighted also because it's Black History Month. And then it seems like for Autism Awareness Month, there was especially
Yeah.
egregious anti-ableist anti-autism, behavior coming from the top brass, So, and I'd be interested to look into the history because, like, Black History Month started as Black History Week, made by a Black person, Dr. Carter G. Woodson. I wonder about Autism Awareness Month.
I can do a
Like,
deep dive. I could definitely do
yeah,
that.
was it organized, designed, created, started by an autistic individual? What's their background? What was their reasoning? What was their messaging? What was their purpose? Because I think that that's important information as well, and it situates what it should be moving forward. And a lot of times these things become bigger than the person that created it, which I think is good.
Right.
Because I like to follow, I like to take useful theories from people, but I'll never wholeheartedly stand an individual because it's like, yep, turns out they was on that bad island, or yeah, they turns out they were a bad person, they were bad with these specific people. There's always like that ability, and everybody has a growth across time, so they could have been doing. Everybody's gonna do harm. Everybody can do harm. Everybody can do harm, no matter you're able, not disabled, disabled. Everybody can do harm. So you never know.
Right.
I'm rambling to give you time. Hopefully, I was hoping that you're gonna come up with,
No,
you
you're
know.
fine. Um,
Okay.
yeah, so I did do a little search. I did know this. It's just one of those things that doesn't always just stay where I can like spout off the facts. Autism Awareness Month started in April of 1970, which is, quite a while ago, but it was founded by the individual, Dr. Bernard Rimland, who also co founded the Autism Society of America. Now, the Autism Society of America, I believe, had the problematic logo of like a crying child within a puzzle piece. So that's something that we all reject now. And it was also blue to symbolize the fact that more boys are diagnosed with autism than girls. Another problem we have with Autism Speaks, the blue puzzle piece is the logo. And it just kind of caters into the misrepresentation of diagnosis and everything. But I can definitely do a deep dive and I think it would be appropriate in April that we do that. Akin to your Black History Month minute, but in this type of space, and then I can also transfer it over to Niraba too. But I'll do some more digging. I'm aware of this stuff. It's just I need to kind of bring it back into my brain full
Yeah.
frontal. So yeah, but it's interesting that it's like it doesn't matter necessarily what marginalized identity you're a part of. It seems that there are a lot of common themes among these months that are designated, hopefully, to intentionally celebrate that demographic, but it seems that sometimes that isn't necessarily the case.
Yep, yep. And I feel like also a lot of times I was just thinking about this whole podcast today and I was like, man, I hope that people aren't taking what we say out of context because what we've talked about requires a lot of nuance and a lot of like explanation and a lot of description and contextualization to really understand the point. And I feel like at any point someone can just be like, oh, yep, clip that, cancel them, which I'm not really worried about
Right.
because I'm like, listen to the whole thing. You know what I mean? But I hope that people can understand like complex things need complex explanations because they're complex. You can't just explain simply something complex. You can try to explain it in a more digestible way. I think that there's that to simply, oh yeah, just simplify it, dumb it down, make it a spoon feed them, and make it just a bite-sized bit to be short
A
enough
lot of this
for a
can't
30
be.
second TikTok. Yeah, it's not, it doesn't work like that.
No,
Life doesn't work like that.
no, absolutely. I think that is probably a good place to say like comment if if you don't want to comment about the previous stuff though. However,
Yeah.
comment about anything else, and subscribe. And yeah, unless
Like
you have any other final
hype
words.
this. You could press hype on YouTube and it does good things for us. So hype the video.
I didn't know you could hype now. Wow, I'm so out of touch.
Yeah.
I love it.